The hospital's automatic doors slid open and shut with a tired sigh, as if even the building itself was exhausted from carrying so much grief in and out all day. Cold air clung to the concrete outside, and on a narrow metal bench near the entrance sat a young woman and her little daughter. The bench was chipped and rusted at the edges, forgotten by everyone except those who had nowhere else to wait. The woman pulled her thin coat tighter around her shoulders, though it did little to block the chill. Her eyes stayed fixed on the glowing doors, watching every person who entered or exited, hoping, without knowing exactly why, that one of them might bring good news. Her daughter sat close beside her, legs dangling, shoes scuffed and too small. The child's fingers wrapped tightly around her mother's sleeve, a silent promise that she would not let go. Inside the hospital, the girl's grandmother lay surrounded by beeping machines and hushed voices. The doctors had spoken carefully, their words measured, as though hope were something fragile that might shatter if handled too roughly. Visiting hours were over, and waiting was all they were allowed to do now. A sleek black car rolled up to the entrance and stopped smoothly, its polished surface reflecting the harsh hospital lights. A tall man stepped out, his posture straight, his expression controlled. His coat was expensive, his shoes spotless, his presence unmistakably out of place among the worn benches and anxious faces. He was a man used to moving forward, to walking past obstacles rather than stopping for them. Today, he had come for business, papers to sign, a specialist to consult, a quick exit plan before emotion could interfere. As he walked toward the doors, the little girl looked up. Her gaze lingered on him, not with awe or fear, but with a quiet curiosity that came from noticing things adults often missed. She tugged gently on her mother's sleeve and whispered, "Mama, that man looks lonely." The woman glanced up, startled, and followed her daughter's eyes. Embarrassment flushed her face, and she quickly looked away, suddenly aware of her worn clothes and tired posture. She didn't want attention. She didn't want to be seen. Especially not by someone like him. But the man heard the child's words. He slowed, then stopped altogether. Something about that single sentence reached past his tailored coat and careful composure. He turned around, surprised to find the girl watching him openly, her face sincere and unguarded. Instead of continuing inside, he walked back and sat down on the bench. The metal creaked under his weight, loud in the quiet space. The woman stiffened, unsure whether to apologize or move away. But he didn't look at her with judgment or curiosity. He simply sat there, hands folded, eyes forward, sharing the same cold air and the same waiting. For the first time since she had arrived, the woman felt the sharp edge of her fear soften, just slightly. And for the first time in a very long while, the man felt something he had almost forgotten, the strange, grounding comfort of not walking away. The minutes stretched long after he sat down, filled with the quiet rhythm of the hospital doors and the distant echo of footsteps inside. No one spoke at first. The woman kept her hands folded in her lap, thumbs rubbing together out of habit, while her daughter studied the man beside them with open curiosity. The cold seemed less sharp now, as if the bench itself had warmed slightly from shared presence. The child was the first to break the silence. She reached into her small backpack and pulled out a crumpled packet of biscuits, offering it to the man with both hands. "You can have one," she said simply. "We're waiting anyway." He hesitated, then smiled and accepted a piece, careful not to take too much. "Thank you," he replied, surprised by how much the word meant in that moment. He hadn't been offered anything without expectation in a very long time. The biscuit tasted ordinary, yet comforting, like something from a life he once had. The woman finally spoke, her voice low and tired. "I'm sorry if she disturbed you." She glanced at her daughter, then back at the doors. "She talks to everyone." "I'm glad she did," he said honestly. The truth slipped out before he could stop it. She let out a slow breath, as if the permission to speak had been granted. "My mother is inside," she continued. "She raised me by herself. Worked 2 jobs. Never complained." Her voice wavered. I promised I'd be strong like her. Today, I don't feel very strong. He nodded, staring ahead. I understand, he said. After a pause, he added, I lost my wife years ago. Ever since then, hospitals feel final. The word lingered between them. I usually don't stop. I usually just walk in, do what I have to do, and leave. The little girl leaned gently against his arm, as if it were the most natural thing in the world. It's okay to be scared, she said softly. Mama gets scared too. But she stays. Something tightened in his chest. He thought of the meetings he had skipped, the funerals he had avoided, the emotions he had buried under work and success. He had always believed moving forward meant never sitting still. A nurse stepped outside and called the woman's name. The woman stood so quickly her knees nearly buckled, fear rushing back into her eyes. She clutched her coat, readying herself for whatever news waited inside. The man stood as well. Without thinking, he reached into his pocket and placed his card in her trembling hand. No matter what happens, he said quietly, you don't have to face it alone. She looked at the card, then at him, eyes shining with unshed tears. The child smiled up at him, certain and calm, as if she already knew that some meetings were never accidents, and some waiting benches were meant to change lives. The night had settled deeper by the time the woman returned, the sky outside the hospital darkened to a soft, aching blue. The automatic doors slid open again, and she stepped out slowly, as though the ground beneath her had changed while she was gone. Her eyes were red, her face drawn, but there was a steadiness in her posture that hadn't been there before. She paused, searching the bench with quiet uncertainty. He was still there. The man rose as soon as he saw her, relief flickering across his face before he could hide it. He hadn't realized how much he had been waiting too, counting the minutes by the glow of the entrance lights, listening to the child hum softly beside him, letting the silence speak where words could not. The little girl jumped off the bench and ran to her mother, wrapping her arms tightly around her waist. Grandma's still sleeping, the woman said, her voice barely above a whisper. The doctors say she's stable for now. The words trembled, fragile but real, and when she said them out loud, they seemed to give her strength. She closed her eyes for a moment, breathing in her daughter's hair, grounding herself in the warmth of that small body. That's good, he said gently. He meant more than the medical update. He meant the moment, the breath, the fact that she had come back out instead of collapsing somewhere unseen. They sat down again, the three of them, as if the bench had quietly claimed them. The child swung her legs and smiled at the man, pleased. See, she said proudly. Sitting works. He laughed, a soft, unguarded sound that surprised even him. It felt strange on his tongue, like using a muscle he had forgotten existed. You were right, he replied. I think you're very wise. The woman looked at him then, really looked at him, and for the first time she didn't see wealth or distance or the careful lines of someone used to control. She saw tiredness. She saw kindness. She saw someone who had chosen to stay when leaving would have been easier. I don't even know your name, she said quietly. He told her. Not the name that appeared in articles or on buildings, just his name. The one his wife used to say when she wanted him to slow down. The one that belonged to the man sitting on a cold bench outside a hospital. They talked a little longer, about nothing important and everything that mattered. About school lunches and missed birthdays. About how fear feels heavier at night. About how loneliness doesn't care how full your life looks from the outside. Eventually, the nurse came again, reminding them that the entrance would close soon. The woman stood, adjusting her daughter's coat. Thank you, she said, her voice thick with emotion. For staying. He nodded. Thank you, he replied, realizing he meant it just as much. As they walked away, the child turned back and waved. He raised his hand in return, feeling something settle quietly into place inside him. It wasn't a promise. It wasn't a miracle. It was simply the understanding that sometimes, the smallest decision, to sit instead of walk away, could change the shape of a life.